When I was a young private in Marine combat training, one of the first pieces of gear that we were instructed to personally procure was a timepiece. It was a functional tool that we were required to have because we were not allowed to use our phones to check the time. We weren't allowed to have our phones, period. Our combat instructors collected them from us. And we needed our timepieces in order to be punctual, as well as to coordinate our movements as a unit in synchronization. So having a good quality, accurate timepiece was essential to getting through combat training without slowing things down or getting in trouble by being late to something. After graduating combat training and once I got to the fleet, my mother gifted me a watch. It was definitely nicer than the Timex Expedition that I bought for myself in combat training, but I have since grown out of that timepiece and collected many others for myself that I have documented and cataloged on this channel since its inception. That first timepiece, however, was this Fossil Townsman automatic with a 45mm case diameter, Jubilee style bracelet, and a Japanese automatic movement that is non-hacking. My tastes have evolved since then, but in today's video I want to talk about whether or not you should be embarrassed to own fashion watches, because that's what this is. This is a fashion watch. Fossil, Armani Exchange rather, Michael Kors, Tommy Hilfiger, and so on and so forth. We've all seen them. Some of us, including myself, have even started our collections with them. But are fashion watches something that we should be embarrassed about? Or is there a place for them in a serious collection? These are the questions that I want to talk about today. These are the answers that I want to give. And I want to start today's video off with some very, very honest truths. First being that owning a fashion watch becomes a problem when you base your whole collection off of fashion brands and you call yourself a serious collector. It is generally perceived to be a credibility issue, because the thing with fashion watches in general is that they are mass-produced to an extremely high degree, more so than your standard watches by regular watchmakers. And it's a problem when you argue that fashion watches are on par with other watchmaking brands of the same price tier like Seiko or Tissot. The community generally is going to react negatively to fashion watches because they are mostly about the branding and the aesthetic and not necessarily the craftsmanship that goes into them. Most fashion watches, with the exception of something like this, again, this is automatic, are usually powered by very, very basic quartz movements and then sold at heavily inflated prices. Fashion watches like Fossil sell for a couple hundred, if not several $100s, but they are made using movements that can be bought for less than 100, if that. The thing is, however, it is okay to start here. I would be a hypocrite to say that it's wrong to start with a fashion watch, because fashion watches, in my opinion, are a good gateway into the wider world of watch collecting. Most collectors, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that's done this, but I'm pretty sure that most collectors have started with something that was affordable and stylish, like something like this, even if it was not horologically significant. This particular watch right here is definitely, it was affordable, and it was very stylish for the time. Aside from the 45mm case diameter, which I wish it was not that big, this is generally a pretty stylish watch. I like the way that this one wears. It's got this 5-link Jubilee style bracelet with a lot of stretch in it. It's PVD coated. It's got Roman numeral indices at 3, 6, 9, and 12, and then stick indices at the other markers. It has no loom, but it has a small second subdial as well as a AM PM indicator on the dial as well. So I would say that this watch is more aesthetic than many other fashion watches out there. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but like, the reason I chose this watch is because, in my opinion, I think it looks better than a lot of other fashion watches in the same category. I went with this for the reason. I wanted something that I perceived at the time to be the best, and this is what I settled on. Now, that's going to factor into my next few points in the video, but we'll come back to that. Again, most collectors started somewhere with something affordable and stylish, even if it wasn't like very horologically significant. There's no horological significance to this. Fashion watches are definitely accessible, and they do spark an interest in the wider world of watch collecting. And that's exactly what happened to me, because after I ended up replacing this watch, I eventually got myself a Tissot C-Star, and then an Omega Seamaster Diver 300M, an Omega Planet Ocean, and then it just kind of went crazy from there. You know, owning these fashion watches is not necessarily embarrassing unless you stop learning and growing from there. Like, if I could put this into some sort of analogy, I would say that the person who thinks that fashion watches are the be-all end-all when it comes to watch collecting are equivalent to the popular dude that peaked in high school and is now like working a dead-end job somewhere and is going nowhere in life. You know, I had a fossil Townsman automatic very early on. I wore this for 7 years. It was way more durable than I expected it to be. It was way more reliable than I expected it to be. And it really wasn't that bad, but it was the start of something greater. It was not the end of the road. The next thing I want to talk about is how to handle fashion watches gracefully. So if you can acknowledge that fashion watches are more about looks than legacy, heritage, engineering, or mechanics, then that's good to go. Like, that's okay. And it's okay to keep one or two if they have sentimental value. Again, this piece was a gift from my mother almost 10 years ago. And I've worn it through a lot of good moments and a lot of really bad moments in my life. And if this watch could speak, it would tell some pretty interesting stories, I think. However, it is not really advisable to make a fashion watch the centerpiece of your collection. I have many other watches that I would consider to be the centerpiece of my collection before this fossil. Even though this one has a lot of meaning to me, I don't wear it anymore, and there's other watches that I would rather wear, like, for example, this Grand Seiko SBGX 261, and this Rolex Explorer 2, which was my most recent pickup. You need to avoid pretending that fashion watches are something that they're not. They're not tool watches. They are not generally very reliable pieces. They're not handmade. They're not handcrafted. There's not a lot of work that goes into actually making them. I have serious doubts about how many hands actually go into making this piece, and I'm pretty sure that these are very, very highly mass-produced to the max extent possible, at the expense of general quality, and that just needs to be acknowledged. That is something that needs to be understood when getting into these pieces, and we should try to avoid lying to ourselves and telling ourselves that these can replace watches made by actual watchmaking brands that put a lot more effort into the quality of their products. I would say that it is important to start, if you're going to start with a fashion watch, eventually you should gradually upgrade your collection from there, and do so with a sense of purpose, curiosity, and a willingness to learn, right? Because I replaced my fossil with, again, a Tissot C-Star, and then as I continued to learn more and more about watches and what goes into actually making a good watch, I was able to refine my tastes and figure out what it is I really like, what it is I actually want from a good watch. And by the time I was buying very, very expensive watches, I didn't have any regrets about my purchases because I was extremely happy and satisfied that the purchase I was making was going towards something that will last me the rest of my life. So in terms of upgrading, there are a few brands that I would like to point out, right? Seiko, I talk about them ad nauseum on this channel. They make a lot of good, strong entry-level pieces like the SSK001, the Seiko 5 GMT, the SRPD 55, which is the Seiko 5, it's the Seiko 5 successor, I think, to the SKX. And Citizen has got a lot of watches in the Echo Drive collection that are solar powered and are radio controlled. So my grandfather has a lot of Echo Drive watches that have continued to last him throughout his life, and they're just solid timepieces all around. Again, Tissot, I got a Tissot C-Star 1000 from the get-go. Great watch, I highly recommend that. Casio as well. You can go for their G-Shock line, which maxes out things in terms of durability at the expense of maybe aesthetics. But they also have the Casio Edifice line too, which brings back more of those like traditional looks of a watch at the expense of aesthetics, but with other feature sets that are valuable to collectors, like accuracy, complications of various types, chronographs, GMTs, what have you. Casio is a great brand. And then there are micro brands as well, like Sterling timepieces and Sang & Instruments, which make quartz and automatic models for a higher price generally than your typical fashion watches. But what you get with brands like Sterling timepieces and Sang & Instruments is a high quality, durable, mostly handmade and well-regulated timepiece that is accurate and can stand up to pretty much anything. Those watches are pretty bomb-proof. It's crazy. I love Sterling timepieces and I love Sang & Instruments, and yeah, those are good. I like those watches a lot. But lastly, in terms of my final thoughts, the thing that really matters as a collector is that your taste is going to evolve with time. If you start with this, I guarantee it's not the thing that's going to stay on your wrist for the rest of your life. Your tastes are going to change, you're going to want other things, and eventually you're going to want to replace it with something better. That's just naturally how this thing goes. If you're not one of those people, then all I can say is congratulations to you, because you're clearly immune to the addiction that is the watch collecting hobby. Aside from that, it's okay generally to keep reminders of where you started. Just don't cling to them as the peak. For me personally, I keep this around because of its sentimental value, but I definitely do not consider this to be the absolute pinnacle of horological excellence in my collection, as evidenced by the other two watches that I have previously shown on camera. Collecting watches is generally about learning, appreciating, and just like taking it slow and enjoying the journey as it progresses. And with that, there are going to be stages where you want to upgrade and you want to get something better. And when those stages come, it's okay to branch off from fashion watches and get something from a well-known reputable brand like Seiko or Tissot or what have you. Or it's not something to be embarrassed about to have a fashion watch in your collection. Just use them as a stepping stone towards something greater. So I want to know what you guys think. How do you feel about fashion watches? Do you think it's embarrassing to still own them? And I want to know what your guys' first watch was. Are you still holding on to it today? And yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think. I'm looking forward to hearing it. With that being said, have a great Saturday and take care. Be well.